No matter what class you're playing inside of Diablo Immortal, you are looking for the best build, the strongest build that'll give you the best opportunity to be successful. Today, we're focusing in on PvP of all 7 classes inside of Diablo Immortal. To do this, I'm going to be going through the leaderboards, looking at the top PvPers across all classes, and taking a look at, diving into, you can say, the builds that they're using, with the essences that they're using, so that we can build our classes up in similar ways to try to see the same success. As you guys can see, I'm playing as the Blood Knight inside of the game, but we're not going to look at my build today. I've shared that enough on the channel. Instead, we're going to look at the #1 Blood Knight inside of the game, along with the #1 players of all of the classes. But let's not wait. Let's dive right in. This video is being sponsored by Dungeon Hunter 6, the new game in the Dungeon Hunter franchise that's been going on since 2015. And let me tell you, the anticipation has been worthwhile. Dungeon Hunter 6 is a free-to-play mobile action RPG with a unique hero collector feature, and it lives with stunning fantasy artwork and style. The gameplay features fast-paced battles that are hack and slash style combat that are going to allow you to use different types of builds to take down those big bosses. This game is absolutely free to play, and if you want to join now, you can check out my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to get yourself involved. For every boss that you want to defeat, the game has a unique mechanism by which you can not only loot, ride, and fly them, but also summon up to 3 of them into the battlefield to become members of your squad, make them follow you anywhere, and perform combo skills. Basically, they're gonna fight beside you. You can even shape shift into them so that you can harness their power when you get towards the late game. It's a really cool mechanism that I haven't seen done before in any genre of game, and there's over 100 uniquely designed bosses to conquer and explore, and new classes and units updated monthly. Really, the fun here is endless. Now, the graphics inside of the game are also amazing. Dungeon Hunter 6 takes the 3D graphics and performance to the next level with stunning skill animations optimized for multicasting. Download this game right now for free using my link in the description on either Android or on iOS. You can also use my QR code if you're viewing this on PC. And if you use my link, you're gonna get a starter pack with a value of $50. Included in this starter pack, you have 10 summoning scrolls, 1 SSR Lieutenant, the Demonic Wolf, and 1 accessory pack. Use your game account to enter the launch Lucky Spin event for free to win prizes, and these prizes are good, like an iPhone 15 Pro Max, a PS5, an Apple Watch, and more, starting on October 15th. Check the description for more details. So what I'm going to be doing here is looking at the #1 player in Inferno Battlegrounds for each character class, starting out with Flex, which is a player that I actually know. By the way, we are on the Iceburn tier server. Let's take a look. First of all, he's utilizing the Shadow's Edge primary attack, Swarm of Bats, Skewer, Wave of Blood, and Sanguigate. Now let's look into the secondary gear, see what he's rocking over here. Looks like on secondary, he's going with a 2-piece Vathu, which is going to increase the duration of all beneficial effects on your party members by 30%. And he's going with a 4-piece Gloom Guide's Prize. Increases your damage done by 15% for 3 seconds after using a dash, and increases your critical hit chance by 22.5% for 3 seconds after using a dash. So utilizing a dashing skill is going to be very beneficial for him. That is probably Skewer because of essences that he has chosen. Let's now dive into all of the gear and the essences that he's chosen. All right, the gems, they're going to vary based on player. So really, we're just going to be looking at the essences to be the most specific here. So he's going with the Gorger's Yawn, which enables Wave of Blood range increased by 26%. Of course, we're going to notice that all of these players have purple slots. What this means is those slots have awakened. They've been awakened, which means they have max level gems inside of them, whether those be level 10 5-star gems or level 10 1-star gems. All of these spots will have been awakened. Moving on to the second piece of gear, he's got warmth and likability. Wave of Blood maximum charge is now increased by 1, and the cooldown is reduced by 2.4%. Anything that we see here in green is an additional effect from the awakened slot, which I won't focus on for the purpose of this video, because many of you don't have your slots awakened. The shoulders, the solemn snare, I use this one as well. Swarm of Bats now shrouds you in a fog of blood mist, increasing your movement speed and making you untargetable, while also dealing damage to nearby enemies. Swarm of Bats damage is increased by 12%. Moving on to the pants, he's going with the Catalatania. Sanguigate's second activation now causes you to burst into the air, damaging and knocking up and stunning nearby enemies. Sanguigate damage is increased by 12%. This is a great one because of the stun ability. Using stuns is a big deal when you're in PvP. The Basalver, this is a different one that I'm used to. Skewer now causes you to leap into the air and slam into the ground to a location, knocking enemies up and stunning them. And the damage is increased by 12%. That is a second stunning skill used right there. Sprig of Hawthorn. Skewer now also increases your damage done by 16% for 4 seconds. Moving on to the second primary piece of gear, we have Cruel Vendetta. Shadow's Edge damage is increased by 32%. That is a massive increase in damage for the Blood Knight. 32% just from a primary weapon is a big deal. And then Pinch Point, we have Cruel Eruption. Wave of Blood now unleashes an eruption of blood around you, dealing damage and delivering a knock-up effect to nearby enemies. Wave of Blood is increased by 12%. That's the build right here for the Blood Knight. If you want to take out the charm, of course, he's going to have a decent one right here. 4%, 4%, 2, 2, 2. Time to move on to our next class. Next, we're looking at the Wizard in Infernal Battlegrounds, and we're going to take a look at Winty's build, see how this is built out, starting with the skills: Electrocute, Teleport for movement, Scorch, Lightning Nova, and Arcane Torrent. Let's take a look at the secondary pieces of gear to start out. Again, another 2-piece of Vethus, and coming in with a 4-piece of Grace of the Flagellant. We'll read Grace of the Flagellant since we didn't speak about it in the previous build. All continual damage, channel damage, and persistent ground damage is increased by 15%. Each time you damage an individual enemy 5 times, you'll do an additional 9,400 damage to that enemy. For me personally, I use this same set, both of these same sets, for my Blood Knight. It is all based on who likes what and where you get the most value. From our headpiece, the Memory of Xayanu. Flaming Orbs. Scorch now conjures 4 flaming orbs that orbit around you and explode when they strike enemies, damaging and burning all nearby enemies. Scorch's damage is increased by 18%. Chest piece is Eleanor's Forever. We have here, if I could find it, there we go, Fire Nova. Lightning Nova now hurls balls of burning fire. Lightning Nova's damage is increased by 18%. The Perfect Situation. Legendary attributes are: after casting Teleport, your movement speed is increased by 30%. Teleport's cooldown is reduced by 3.6%. Again, notice this player here has all awakened slots. Novel Castigation. Legendary attribute Arcane Torrent also fires tracking missiles that seek out enemies, dealing 12,575 damage. Damage increased by 90%. The first primary weapon is the Rift Carver. Chaotic Companion is the legendary essence. Arcane Torrent now creates a chaotic orb that moves with you and fires arcane missiles at random nearby enemies. Arcane Torrent's damage is increased by 18%. Soaring Scree. With a legendary attribute, allies struck by Lightning Nova gain 30% increased movement speed for 1.6 seconds. We have our second primary weapon, Thunderbird's Bite. The legendary essence, Lightning Nova damage is increased by 19%. And our second secondary is the Siphon. Legendary attribute, casting Lightning Nova temporarily increases your movement speed by 60%. Lightning Nova cooldown reduced by 3.6% as well. Taking a look at the charm, 4% and 6% attribute increases, which is a very impressive charm for this wizard. Next, we're going to look at a Barbarian build from Whisk. Starting off with the skills, Frenzy is the attack, Furious Charge is the first skill, Wrath of the Berserker, Whirlwind, and Sprint. Very nice looking Barbarian here. If we take a look at the secondary gear, the Thu is a 2-piece set, and coming in with a 4-piece of, oh, actually, you know what? Here we go. Going with another 2-piece right here of Untouchable Mount Bank. Each time you take damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a shield that absorbs damage equal to 13% of your maximum life. Can't happen more than 9 seconds. This one is different, and there is no third 2-piece set being used in this build. Also notice, every slot here is not awakened. So a very impressive player here based on the gear. Let's take a look at some of the equipment being used. Brace of Ancestors. Coming in with a legendary essence, Wrath of the Berserker now also causes your primary attack to deal 100% of the damage done to nearby enemies. Wrath of the Berserker cooldown is reduced by 3.6%. The chest piece is Tracker's Rage. All damage you deal increased by 10% after activating Furious Charge, and the cooldown is reduced by 3.6%. The Coming Storm is the shoulder piece. Wrath of the Berserker cooldown decreased by 18.6%. Screaming Fury are the pants. Merciless Assault. Furious Charge now charges into a location, damaging all nearby enemies and knocking them into the air. Maximum 2 charges. Furious Charge damage increased by 18%. Taking a look here at some of the primary weapons, which look very familiar to me being a long-term Barbarian. Ritteroo. When Frenzy deals a critical hit, your primary attack speed is increased by 50% for 3.2 seconds. Then we're coming in with the Oncoming Brutality. Frenzy increased damage you deal to that enemy by 6% for every 3 seconds, stacking up to 30% increase. The damage is also increased by 9%. Then we look at Bitter Wind, which is a must-use primary as a Barbarian. This one right here is, if I could find the legendary essence, Whirlwind now draws the power of the wind to deal increased damage while no longer reducing your movement speed. The damage is increased by 18%. So this is one that you must use. I would probably switch this one out if I had to myself, but you need to use Whirlwind at maximum speed. And Sundred Legacy, the legendary essence right here is going to be Wrath of the Berserker now causes nearby enemies to burn. This is something that's so important, especially if you're doing open world farming specifically. You want the enemies that you encounter just to burn from running past them. It does work well in PvP as well, or it could work well in PvP. I'm actually a little bit surprised about this Barbarian build by some of the things chosen, and most of the charm pieces are increased by 2% damage, where Frenzy is increased by a 4% damage. We're going to look at the Monk, and to do this, we're going to look at Gul'dan's build. Let's look at the skills first, starting with the primary attack, which is Deadly Reach. Skill number 1 is Shield of Zen, then Mythic Strike, Cyclone Strike, and Exploding Palm. For reference here, I have not played Monk since the beta. This is the one class that I have not touched since the beginning of time. Let's take a look at some of the secondary gear to start. A Thu going with a 4-piece, which is also going to unlock this second attribute. Increases the target's attack speed by 50% for 3 seconds each time you use a skill to grant a beneficial effect to yourself or another party member. So we have a multiple piece Thu, and that's it. Also notice here, nothing is awakened. No gear has been awakened, which is actually surprising to me. This attacker is not going with crazy gems. Numb Realization is the headpiece. Enemies marked by Exploding Palm have a 30% chance to detonate by other attacks. Exploding Palm cooldown is reduced by 3.6%. Coming in with Winter's Embrace, look at this, only a level 4 legendary gem. Frigid Cyclone. Cyclone Strike is now empowered with Icy Wind, dealing damage while putting it nearby enemies and freezing them. But it can no longer be charged. Cyclone Strike's damage is increased by 18%. Coming in with Feline Defiance. Legendary attribute for this shoulder piece, Mythic Strike now also increases your primary attack speed by 30% for 6.4 seconds. These monk pants are Branding Bond. The essence here, Mystic Strike, now causes you to move quickly in a direction, damaging all enemies in the path, and the strike damage is increased by 18%. Primary weapon, Peerless Conductor. The legendary third strike of Deadly Reach now knocks enemies up in the air, dealing 30,000 damage. Deadly Reach damage is increased by 9%. That is an insane amount of damage. We have Obstruction of Omniscience, where the legendary essence, Exploding Palm, now dashes forward, burning enemies. Exploding Palm damage is increased by 18%. Intervailing Law, legendary essence, Shield of Zen now causes you to charge to a location, granting you and all nearby allies a shield that absorbs damage, and the cooldown is reduced by 7.2%. Now, notice it says here, only one skill that can transform an essence. Where was that? I want to read it actually to you. Only one legendary that transform a skill is allowed. So because these two essences are being used here, one of them you should swap out so that you can actually get the essence from it. Let's see if the same thing is happening here. Eye of the Storm. Cyclone Strike radius is increased by 29%. Let's take a look at the charm that this monk is using here. We have +2, 4, 4, 2, and 4%. It's an impressive charm for this monk. I Bleed Orange is rocking a Demon Hunter. Let's dive into the build, starting with the skills. The first attack, the primary attack, is Crossbow Shot. Then the 4 skills, Vengeance, Impale, Knockback Shock, and of course, a mobility skill being Daring Swing. The secondary gear, we're going with a 4-piece Vithu and a 2-piece Banquet of Eyes. Damage dealt to enemies suffering from continual damage effect is increased by 15%. Starting with the headpiece, he's rocking the False Manifesto. After using Knockback Shot, your primary attack speed is increased by 30% for 6.4 seconds. The Duplicus Prophetics Knockback Shot now causes your primary attack to also fire a blast of wind that knocks enemies away. Knockback Shock damage is increased by 18%. Taking a look at the shoulder piece, Chill Wrath Mantle, we have Icy Path. Daring Swing now fires icy arrows at the ground, forming an icy path that continually damages and chills. Daring Swing damage is increased by 18%. We have Scorn Beak from the Pants. Daring Swing now also increases your primary attack speed by 30% for 6.4 seconds. The first primary weapon is, and it's another one where we're having double being used, is the Excavator. Shadow Blades. Impale now causes your primary attack to hurl penetrating knives that deal damage to all enemies that pass through. Impale damage is increased by 18%. Secondary piece of gear is Puncta Obscura. Some weird names here. Impale now also causes, enemies to bleed for 7,000 damage over 3 seconds, and the increased damage is 90%. We have Ember Mist, where Smokescreen cooldown is decreased by 18.6%, and Preferred Instrument, legendary attribute here. After using Knockback Shot, your damage is increased by 10% for 4.8 seconds. Only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those slots are awakened. Our charm here, 6%, 4%, a 10% for Reign of Vengeance, which is insane, plus another 6 and another 6 after that. Pretty impressive looking Demon Hunter. To take a look at the Crusader, we are taking a look at Factor with a very impressive looking build. By the way, my favorite looking class in the game is the Crusader. He seems to be the biggest and some of the best artwork inside of the game. That's my opinion. Coming in with the first primary attack is Punish, then the 4 skills, Conjuration of Light, Holy Banner, Condemn, and Falling Sword. Taking a look at the equipment here, the secondary Banquet of Eyes, damage dealt to enemies suffering from continual damage effects increased by 15%. That is a 2-piece. Then we have a 2-piece of Feasting Baron's Pack, increases the duration of your harmful effects by 30%. And then we have a Vithu 2-piece, increases the duration of all beneficial effects on your party members by 30%. Let's start with the gear. Headpiece is first Arrow Keeper, I'm sorry. The inspiration from Holy Banner now moves with you. Holy Banner cooldown reduced by 7%. That's actually really good. I love how that follows you along as you attack. Heart of Grandeur is the chest piece. Lightning in a Bottle. Condemn now conjures a condensed lightning storm that follows you, randomly dealing damage to nearby enemies, and the damage is increased by 18%. We have Wind Blessed Pauldrons. Conjure of Light duration is increased by 39%. Like the Blood Knight's damage increase with Big, that is massive for Conjuration of Light. Permanent Reapproach. We have Condemn radius is increased by 29%. Very nice. Primary weapon Incandescence. Legendary attribute. Remember, again, only one can be used at a time. Falling Sword can be charged, unleashing a Holy Blast wave to damage enemies. While charging, your movement speed is increased, and you're also immune to knockback and loss of control. Man, that is an insane one, Incandescence. We have the first secondary weapon, Mete Out Mercy. Right here, Punish deals 50% increased damage to enemies suffering loss of control. Very powerful. Observer. Legendary Essence. Enemies struck by Punish take 19%, increasing damage from subsequent hits for 2 seconds. This effect stacks up to a maximum of 57%. And the second secondary weapon, Blinding Wall. Legendary Essence says, Condemn also unleashes bright light that blinds enemies for 1.6 seconds. Cannot affect the same target more than once every 3 seconds. Tell you what, looking at this build makes me want to dive back into the Crusader and check out this charm. Spinning Shield, an 8% damage increase, and everything else gets a 4%. That is an impressive Crusader. And the last class to look at is a Necromancer. We're going to be looking at Meaford's class right here. With the skills to start, we have Soulfire as the primary, Skeletal Mage, Command Golem, Command Skeletons, and for evasion, Wrath Form. So definitely a spawn build right here. For the gear, coming in with a 6-piece Shepherd's Call to the Wolves. Your summons deal 15% more damage. Critical hit chance increases by 3% for each of your summons up to a maximum of 18%. Your summons enter a frenzied state for 12 seconds each time one of them get critical hits. The frenzied state increases their attack speed by 60%. It's not often we see a 6-piece set, but it seems that's the best way to go here with our Necromancer. By the way, man, I miss the Necro. Maybe we should be diving into this one soon too. Maybe it's still a good-looking class, but not as good-looking as the Crusader. But man, it's fun. We have the headpiece, Skull Veil. Skeletal Mage duration is increased by 39%. It's going to keep that mage up longer. Ethereal Boundary. We have activating Wrath Form removes all effects which cause loss of control or decreased movement. Wrath Form cooldown is reduced by 3.6, so you're not going to have any loss of control or slow down effects while you're in your battlegrounds. Executive Discontent increases all damage you deal by 9.5% for each skeletal mage you have active. So the more mages you get out, the more damage you do. Strange Sojourn. Legendary Essence, Nether Tether. Wrath Form now quickly transforms you to the target. On your arrival, you deal a fear all nearby enemies. So basically, everyone's going to run away. Wrath Form damage is increased by 18%. First primary is Pierce Hammer. Command Skeleton's damage is increased by 19%. We have Spite Fetter as the secondary. Soulfire now has a 25% chance to explode on hit, dealing damage to nearby enemies and causing them to burn. The damage for Soulfire is increased by 9%, which is the primary attack being used. Pleasant Venom is the second primary. Poison Golem. Command Golem now summons a Poison Golem that can leap to a target location and unleash a blast wave of corrosive acid. Damage to nearby enemies and causing them to take additional damage. The Golem damage is increased by 18%. And the final secondary piece of gear is the Coffin Lid. Legendary attributes. Skeletal Mage now summons a Dark Magnus that unleashes Hungering Soulfire at nearby enemies. Skeletal Mage damage is increased by 18%. And I am curious to see this charm. What do we got here? 2%, 4, 2, 2, 2. So still a great charm, but nothing that's actually insane. This has been all of the builds inside of the game, or all of the top of the Inferno Battlegrounds leaderboards right now. There is going to be controversy inside of this. Many of you are going to say that the build that you're running is better. And for those of you that do say that, I welcome you to come through my Discord or hit me up on Twitter, preferably, or in the comment section below, and share with me your build so that I can feature it on the channel. And if you really want to be featured yourself, I'm happy to have you submit your builds with some footage of it in action. I could break it down, analyze it, and share it with the community. It's what we do here. Additionally, we took a look at Dungeon Hunter 6 inside of this video. Pretty cool stuff. You could download that via my link in the description of this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys back here in tomorrow's video.